The morning sun peeked through the blinds of a modest apartment in the heart of the city. Olivia Thompson stretched and glanced at her phone. It was 5:30 a.m., and her flight to Singapore was scheduled for 9 a.m. As the CEO of Horizon Innovations, a tech company valued at over $2 billion, she could have easily sent someone else to handle the international meeting, but that wasn't her style. Unlike many executives who flaunted their wealth and status, Olivia preferred to keep a low profile. Her success story wasn't splashed across magazine covers or social media. She built her company from the ground up through hard work, determination, and treating people with respect regardless of their position. Olivia pulled on a pair of comfortable jeans, a simple blue sweater, and her favorite well-worn sneakers. She tucked her hair into a casual ponytail and grabbed her backpack. Looking in the mirror, she appeared like any other traveler. Nothing about her screamed powerful CEO. And that's exactly how she liked it. People reveal their true nature when they don't know they're dealing with someone important, her grandfather used to say. Those words had guided her throughout her career, helping her see beyond fake smiles and empty promises. The taxi ride to the airport was quiet. The driver, an older man named Raj, chatted about the weather and his daughter's college graduation. "What do you do for work?" he asked, making friendly conversation. "I work in tech," Olivia replied with a smile. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. She asked about his daughter's degree instead, genuinely interested in his story. When they arrived at the international terminal, Olivia tipped generously and wished Raj well. The hustle and bustle of the airport greeted her as she made her way inside, rolling her small carry-on behind her. She approached the first-class check-in counter, boarding pass ready on her phone. The line was short, with only a couple ahead of her being helped by airline staff. When it was her turn, she stepped forward with a polite smile. The flight attendant behind the counter, a man in his mid-30s with perfectly styled hair and a crisp uniform, looked up at her and then immediately backed down at his computer. "Economy check-in is over there," he said without making eye contact, gesturing vaguely to the right where a long line of passengers waited. "I have a first-class ticket," Olivia explained calmly, holding up her phone to show her boarding pass. The attendant, whose name tag read Taylor, finally looked at her properly. His eyes swept over her casual clothing and simple backpack. A small frown appeared on his face. "Are you sure? Let me see that." His tone had shifted from dismissive to suspicious. Olivia handed over her phone. Taylor took it with 2 fingers as if touching something distasteful. He squinted at the screen, his frown deepening. "There must be some mistake," he muttered, more to himself than to Olivia. He tapped rapidly on his keyboard, then looked back at her. "Your name is Olivia Thompson?" The disbelief in his voice was impossible to miss. "Yes, that's me," she confirmed, maintaining her composure despite the growing discomfort of the situation. Taylor exchanged glances with another flight attendant who had been watching the interaction. They shared a look that spoke volumes. Clearly, neither believed this casually dressed woman belonged in first class. "I'm afraid first class is fully booked for this flight," Taylor said firmly, handing back her phone. "You'll need to check in at the economy counter." Olivia blinked in surprise. "But I have a confirmed first-class reservation. I made it months ago. As I said, it's fully booked." Taylor's voice had taken on an edge of impatience. "There must have been a system error. You'll have to speak with customer service if you want a refund on the price difference." A businessman in an expensive suit stepped up behind Olivia, clearing his throat loudly to signal his impatience. Taylor's face immediately transformed into a welcoming smile. "I'll be with you in just a moment, sir," he said warmly, before turning back to Olivia with a much cooler expression. "Please move to the economy line so I can assist the next customer." Feeling all eyes on her, Olivia decided not to make a scene. This wasn't the first time she'd been judged by her appearance, and it likely wouldn't be the last. With dignity, she nodded and stepped away from the counter. As she walked toward the economy line, she heard Taylor greeting the businessman effusively. "Good morning, sir. Flying first class to Singapore today? We're delighted to have you with us." The economy line snaked through the terminal, filled with travelers of all kinds, families with tired children, solo backpackers, business people typing furiously on laptops. Olivia waited patiently, observing the interactions around her. When she finally reached the front, the economy check-in attendant, a young woman with kind eyes, greeted her with genuine warmth. "Good morning. How are you today?" "I'm well, thank you," Olivia replied, though there seems to be some confusion with my ticket." She explained the situation, and the young woman, whose name tag read Priya, looked confused. "That's strange. Let me check your reservation." She typed Olivia's details into the system, then looked up with wide eyes. "Ms. Thompson, you definitely have a first-class reservation. I'm not sure why you were sent here." "The gentleman at the first-class counter said it was fully booked," Olivia explained. Priya frowned, checking her screen again. "That's not what the system shows. There are still 3 open seats in first class." She hesitated, glancing toward the first-class counter where Taylor was laughing with a colleague. "Would you like me to call a supervisor?" Olivia considered this for a moment. Making a fuss would only create tension and possibly delay her flight. Besides, she was more interested in observing how the airline staff treated different passengers. "No, that's all right," she decided. "Can you check me in for economy instead?" "I don't mind flying there today." Priya looked uncertain. "But you paid for first class, Ms. Thompson." "I understand. Perhaps the airline can issue a refund for the difference later." Still looking troubled, Priya processed the change. "I've assigned you an aisle seat in the exit row, so at least you'll have more leg room," she said apologetically. "And I've made a note in the system about this situation." "Thank you, Priya. You've been very helpful." As Olivia made her way through security and toward her gate, she pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to her assistant. "Going to need some information on Pacific Airlines when I land. Particularly interested in their training and hiring practices." At the gate, Olivia sat quietly, observing the flight crew as they prepared for boarding. Taylor was there along with several other attendants. They chatted and laughed together, occasionally glancing at passengers with varying degrees of interest or disdain. One flight attendant, a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense expression, seemed to be in charge. She spoke firmly to the others, pointing at a tablet and giving instructions. When a family with young children approached with a question, she answered curtly before turning back to her colleagues. Boarding began, with first-class passengers invited to board at their leisure. Olivia watched as Taylor fawned over the businessman from earlier and other well-dressed passengers. His entire demeanor changed when interacting with people he deemed important. When it was time for economy passengers to board, Olivia joined the line. As she handed her boarding pass to Taylor, his eyes widened slightly in recognition, but he quickly masked it. "Enjoy your flight," he said flatly, barely making eye contact. The airplane cabin was bustling with activity as passengers stowed luggage and found their seats. Olivia settled into her exit row seat, placing her backpack under the seat in front of her. She pulled out a folder containing documents about Horizon Innovation's expansion plans in Southeast Asia. Reviewing the materials for her upcoming meetings, a flight attendant passed by, distributing headphones to economy passengers. When she reached Olivia, she paused, noticing the corporate logo on the folder. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly. "Do you work for Horizon Innovations?" Olivia looked up. "Yes, I do." The attendant's expression shifted slightly. "I've heard they're a great company to work for. My cousin applied for a position in their marketing department recently." "We're always looking for talented people," Olivia replied with a genuine smile. "I hope your cousin has a good experience with the interview process." The attendant nodded and continued down the aisle, but not before giving Olivia a second, more curious glance. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Olivia noticed Taylor and another flight attendant whispering near the galley, occasionally looking in her direction. She pretended not to notice, focusing instead on her documents. The captain's voice came over the intercom, welcoming passengers and announcing their flight time to Singapore. As the safety demonstration began, Olivia closed her folder and turned her attention to the flight attendants, demonstrating oxygen masks and life vests. She couldn't help but notice how differently they treated passengers in first class compared to those in economy. The smiles were brighter, the attention more focused for the premium passengers. It wasn't unusual in the airline industry, but the stark contrast on this particular flight was troubling. Little did the flight crew know that Pacific Airlines had recently been identified as a potential acquisition target for Horizon's new transportation division. Olivia had planned this trip partly to experience their service firsthand before making any decisions. So far, what she was seeing wasn't particularly impressive. The plane taxied down the runway and lifted into the air, leaving the city behind. As they climbed to cruising altitude, Olivia looked out the window at the shrinking landscape below. In business, as in life, perspective was everything. Sometimes you needed to step back, or up in this case, to see the full picture. She opened her laptop and began typing an email to her board of directors. The subject line read, Pacific Airlines Acquisition Initial Observations. 30 minutes into the flight, things were about to get very interesting indeed. The plane leveled at cruising altitude, and the seatbelt sign turned off with a soft ding. Olivia settled more comfortably into her economy seat, opening her laptop to continue reviewing documents for her Singapore meeting. The cabin buzzed with the quiet hum of conversation and the occasional cry of a baby several rows back. In the first-class cabin, a very different atmosphere prevailed. Flight attendant Taylor moved between the spacious seats, offering champagne and hot towels to the passengers with practiced charm. His smile never wavered as he bent down to speak with a gray-haired man in an expensive suit. "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" Taylor asked, refilling the man's glass without waiting for a request. "Quite adequate," the man replied without looking up from his newspaper. Taylor's colleague, Diane, approached him near the galley, lowering her voice. "You'll never believe what I just heard from the ground crew," she said, glancing around to ensure no passengers could overhear. "That woman you sent to economy? The one in the jeans and blue sweater? What about her?" Taylor asked disinterestedly, arranging a tray of appetizers. "She's Olivia Thompson." Taylor paused, the name vaguely familiar but not immediately placing it. "Should that mean something to me?" Diane's eyes widened. "Olivia Thompson, as in the CEO of Horizon Innovations, the tech company that's been all over the business news. They're worth billions." The color drained from Taylor's face as recognition dawned. He had indeed seen the name in business magazines and even on a recent news segment about powerful women in technology. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice suddenly tense. "Positive. Lee from ground operations recognized her when he saw her boarding in economy. He said she has a first-class reservation for this flight." Taylor swallowed hard, remembering how dismissively he'd treated her at check-in. "Well, she didn't look like a CEO," he said defensively. "She was dressed like she was going to the grocery store." "That's apparently her thing," Diane replied. "I looked her up on my phone. She's known for being low-key, doesn't do the whole flashy executive routine." "Well, how was I supposed to know that?" Taylor hissed, anxiety creeping into his voice. "You weren't," Diane conceded. "But here's the interesting part. Pacific Airlines is on her company's radar." Taylor froze. "What do you mean?" "Lee overheard something from management last week. Horizon Innovations is looking to expand into transportation services. They're considering acquiring smaller airlines to get started. And Pacific is on their list." Taylor's voice had risen slightly, causing a nearby passenger to glance over curiously. Diane nodded grimly. "One of their top candidates, apparently." Taylor leaned against the galley counter, mind racing. "So you're telling me that woman in economy, the one I refused first-class service to, could potentially become our boss?" "Not potentially. If Horizon acquires Pacific, she would effectively be our boss's boss's boss." Back in economy, Olivia remained focused on her work, unaware of the panicked conversation taking place in first class. The passenger next to her, an elderly woman with kind eyes, glanced curiously at the complex charts on Olivia's screen. "That looks very complicated," she commented with a gentle smile. Olivia returned the smile. "It can be. I'm reviewing some financial projections for a meeting." "You must have an important job," the woman observed. "I enjoy what I do," Olivia replied simply. "What takes you to Singapore?" "Visiting my son and his family. My newest grandchild just turned 1. The woman beamed, pulling out her phone to show photos of a chubby-cheeked toddler. Olivia admired the photos, genuinely interested. This was why she sometimes preferred economy. Real conversations with real people. Not the forced niceties of business class where everyone was trying to network or impress. Their conversation was interrupted by a flight attendant Olivia hadn't seen before, a young man who appeared nervous as he approached. "Excuse me, Ms. Thompson?" he asked hesitantly. Olivia looked up, surprised to be addressed by name. "Yes? The captain would like to know if you'd be more comfortable in first class. We have, discovered that there is space available after all." The elderly woman beside Olivia raised her eyebrows in interest. Olivia considered the offer for a moment. "That's very kind, but I'm quite comfortable here, thank you." Please thank the captain for me. The flight attendant looked unsure how to respond. Are you certain? It's really no trouble. I'm certain, Olivia said firmly. I've settled in and my neighbor and I were having a lovely conversation. Clearly flustered, the young man nodded and retreated toward the front of the plane, where Taylor and Diane watched anxiously from the galley. What was that about? The elderly woman asked curiously. Olivia smiled. Just a mix-up with the seating assignments. It happens. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, the captain was receiving an urgent message from the airline's headquarters. The flight's roster had been flagged by someone in upper management, who noticed Olivia Thompson's name on the passenger list. The CEO himself had sent word that she was to be treated with the utmost courtesy. What's the situation? The captain asked the co-pilot, who had just finished the call with ground control. Apparently, we have the CEO of Horizon Innovations and Economy, the co-pilot explained. There's been some mistake with her seating. Management is in a panic because their company is considering buying us out. The captain sighed, and no one recognized her at boarding. She's not exactly a celebrity, the co-pilot replied. Keeps a low profile from what I gather. But someone should have checked the VIP list. Has she been offered first class? Yes, but she declined. Said she's comfortable where she is. The captain frowned, considering the implications. That's not a good sign. Send word to the cabin crew to give her special attention without being obvious about it. Back in the main cabin, Olivia had returned to her work, but she couldn't help noticing a change in the atmosphere. The flight attendants, who had barely glanced at economy passengers earlier, were now making frequent passes through her section. One offered extra pillows, another brought fresh coffee without being asked, and Taylor himself appeared with a premium snack basket for all passengers in the exit row. Olivia accepted a bottle of water with a polite thank you, but otherwise gave no indication that she noticed the sudden change in service. Years in the business world had taught her to observe without revealing her thoughts. The elderly woman leaned over with a conspiratorial whisper. I've flown this route 12 times to visit my son, and I've never seen them treat economy passengers like this. You must be someone important, Olivia smiled. I just work in tech, she repeated her earlier line to the taxi driver. Must be some tech, the woman replied with a knowing look. Near the front of the plane, the atmosphere had grown increasingly tense among the crew. Taylor huddled with Diane and two other attendants in the forward galley, their voices low but urgent. This is a disaster, Taylor muttered. She could sink the entire acquisition if she reports how she was treated. Maybe she won't mention it, one attendant suggested hopefully. Taylor shook his head. Would you keep quiet if someone treated you like that? Besides, I've heard she's big on company culture and customer service. Pacific is already on thin ice financially. We can't afford to lose this deal. What do we do? Diane asked. Damage control, Taylor replied firmly. We make the rest of this flight the best experience she's ever had on any airline. And we pray she's the forgiving type. As if on cue, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We want to thank all of our passengers for choosing Pacific Airlines today. We're especially grateful to have such distinguished guests with us on this flight to Singapore. Our estimated arrival time remains unchanged, and our crew will be coming through the cabin shortly with our meal service. We hope you're enjoying your flight. Olivia glanced up at the unusual announcement. Most captains didn't make a point of mentioning distinguished guests. It seemed the word had spread quickly. The meal service began shortly after, with the cart starting unusually at Olivia's row, rather than from the front of economy. The attendants offered her first choice of meals and lingered to ensure everything was to her satisfaction. Throughout the cabin, other passengers began to take notice of the special treatment being directed toward the unassuming woman in jeans and a blue sweater. Whispers traveled from row to row as people speculated about who she might be. In first class, the passengers remained oblivious to the drama unfolding. They enjoyed their premium meals and entertainment, unaware that the most influential person on the plane was sitting in row 16, calmly working on acquisition plans that would determine the future of everyone employed by Pacific Airlines. As the meal service concluded, Olivia closed her laptop and reclined her seat slightly. She took out her phone and made a few notes. Among them, inconsistent service standards, clear class biases in customer interaction, and reactive rather than proactive problem-solving. Below these, she added, potential for improvement with proper leadership and training. Whether that potential would be realized remained to be seen. The flight still had 8 hours to go, and Olivia Thompson was watching everything with the careful eye of someone who hadn't built a billion-dollar company by accident. In the galley, Taylor was frantically texting the ground crew in Singapore, ensuring that a proper reception would be waiting when they landed. Whatever happened for the rest of the flight, one thing was clear: the next few hours would determine a lot more than just customer satisfaction scores. The real decisions would happen after they touched down. The flight to Singapore continued its journey across the Pacific, the massive aircraft cutting through wisps of cloud as passengers settled into the rhythm of long-distance travel. 3 hours had passed since takeoff, and the initial panic among the crew had evolved into a carefully orchestrated campaign of exceptional service. Olivia observed it all with quiet attention. As CEO of Horizon Innovations, she had built her reputation on understanding people, their motivations, their behaviors under pressure, and most importantly, their capacity for growth. This flight was proving to be an interesting case study. The elderly woman beside her had fallen asleep, her head resting against a pillow propped against the window. Olivia used the opportunity to jot down more observations in her notes app. In the front galley, the lead flight attendant, Diane, was briefing the crew during their break rotation. "We need to maintain this level of service throughout the flight," she whispered urgently. "Corporate has been notified of the situation, and they're scrambling to prepare damage control." Taylor, still visibly stressed, ran a hand through his previously immaculate hair. "Has anyone from management contacted her directly?" "Not yet," Diane replied. "They're preparing a formal apology to be delivered upon landing. The regional director is meeting us at the gate." A younger flight attendant named Raj looked confused. "I don't understand why everyone's so worried. So we have a CEO flying with us. Doesn't that happen all the time?" Diane and Taylor exchanged glances. "This isn't just any CEO," Taylor explained, his voice strained. "Horizon Innovations is actively looking to acquire Pacific Airlines. Ms. Thompson is essentially evaluating us as we speak." "And we failed spectacularly," Diane added grimly. "Instead of treating her like the VIP she is, we bumped her to economy based on her appearance." Raj's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Oh, that's not good." "Understatement of the year," Taylor muttered. The captain's voice interrupted their conversation through their crew headsets. "Any update on our special passenger?" "She's still in economy, sir," Diane reported. "Declined all offers to move to first class." "That's concerning," the captain replied. "Keep me posted on any developments. I'll be making another announcement shortly." As predicted, the captain's voice soon came through the main cabin speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're now at our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Our flight path today takes us over the beautiful Pacific Ocean. The weather in Singapore is expected to be a pleasant 84 degrees upon our arrival. We want to thank you again for choosing Pacific Airlines, where we pride ourselves on recognizing and valuing each and every one of our passengers." The emphasis on recognizing wasn't subtle. Several passengers glanced around, wondering about the unusual announcement. Olivia kept her expression neutral, though she noted the clumsy attempt at damage control in her phone. Midway through the flight, meal service began again. This time, the first-class menu was offered to everyone in Olivia's row, an unprecedented move that caused confusion among other economy passengers. "Would you care for the seared salmon with dill sauce or perhaps the filet mignon?" the flight attendant asked Olivia with a nervous smile. "Just the regular chicken option is fine, thank you," Olivia replied. "Are you absolutely certain?" "It's really no trouble. We can prepare anything you'd like." Olivia smiled politely but firmly. "The chicken will be perfect." As the attendant moved away, the businessman across the aisle leaned toward Olivia. "They're certainly giving special treatment to our row," he observed. "Any idea why?" "Perhaps they're testing a new service model," Olivia suggested mildly. The businessman looked skeptical. "In my 15 years of flying this route, I've never seen them offer first-class meals in economy." "Something's going on." He studied her with new interest. "You're not a secret airline reviewer, are you?" Olivia laughed. "Nothing quite so dramatic." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Taylor himself, now carrying a tablet and looking considerably more composed than earlier. "Ms. Thompson, he said, lowering his voice. "I hope you're finding everything satisfactory. I wanted to personally ensure that your needs are being met." "Everything is fine, thank you," Olivia replied, her tone professional but cool. Taylor hesitated, clearly wrestling with something. "Ms. Thompson, I feel I should address what happened during check-in." Olivia raised her hand slightly, stopping him. "This isn't the appropriate time or place for that discussion," she said quietly. "I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to address any concerns after we land." The color drained from Taylor's face, but he nodded quickly. "Of course. Please don't hesitate to let us know if you need anything at all." As he retreated hastily to the front of the plane, the businessman across the aisle raised his eyebrows. "Thompson? Wait, are you Olivia Thompson? From Horizon Innovations?" Olivia nodded, seeing no point in denying it now. The man's expression transformed from curiosity to awe. "I attended your keynote at the Global Tech Summit last year. Your vision for integrating AI with humanitarian efforts was inspiring." "Thank you," Olivia said. "We're making progress, though there's still much work to be done. I had no idea you were so—" He gestured vaguely at her casual attire. "Normal," Olivia suggested with a small smile. "I was going to say approachable," he replied, looking slightly embarrassed. "Most executives I've encountered have a certain arrogance," Olivia offered. The man laughed. "I wouldn't have said it, but yes." Their conversation continued pleasantly, touching on industry trends and mutual connections. What neither of them noticed was how this interaction was being closely observed by the flight crew, who interpreted their animated discussion as a negative sign. "She's telling him about what happened," Taylor whispered to Diane as they watched from the galley. "That's a prominent business journalist from the Financial Times. This could be a PR nightmare." Diane looked alarmed. "How do you know who he is?" "He flew with us last month, first class." I recognized him immediately. Taylor's anxiety was reaching new heights. She could be giving him an exclusive about how Pacific Airlines discriminates against women executives. "We don't know that's what they're discussing," Diane reasoned, though she looked equally worried. What else would they be talking about? Look at how engaged they are. In reality, Olivia and the journalist were discussing their shared interest in traditional Japanese carpentry, a hobby they both pursued in their limited spare time. The airline and its potential acquisition hadn't been mentioned once. 5 hours into the flight, the atmosphere in the cabin had taken on a strange quality. The crew's behavior had shifted from subtle preferential treatment to almost comically exaggerated attentiveness. Every 30 minutes, a different flight attendant would approach Olivia with offers of fresh pillows, premium headphones, extra snacks, or updates on their flight progress. The elderly woman beside Olivia had woken up and watched this parade with increasing amusement. "I should sit next to you on every flight," she joked quietly. "I've never had such attentive service in economy." Olivia smiled. "I don't think this is their standard approach." "Clearly not. But I'm enjoying the benefits." The woman accepted a premium chocolate that had been offered to their row. "Whatever you did to deserve this treatment, I'm grateful to be in the splash zone." In the cockpit, the captain was on his third call with headquarters. The airline's executive team had convened an emergency meeting about the situation, and the CEO himself was now involved. "I understand the gravity of the situation," the captain assured his superiors. "We're doing everything possible to salvage this. But she's declining all special offers." "That's a very bad sign," the voice on the other end replied grimly. "High-level executives expect to be treated accordingly. If she's refusing upgrades, she's likely already decided against us." "What more can we do?" the captain asked, frustration evident in his voice. "Just maintain course. The welcome team in Singapore is preparing something special. With any luck, it might offset the initial impression." As the call ended, the captain turned to his co-pilot. "In 20 years of flying, I've never seen headquarters this worked up over a single passenger." The co-pilot nodded. "The rumor is that Pacific has been struggling since the pandemic. This acquisition could be our only lifeline, and one check-in mistake might have sunk it," the captain concluded darkly. Back in the main cabin, Olivia had finally managed to get some rest. The constant interruptions had ceased after she politely but firmly requested some quiet time. As she dozed, her mind processed what she had observed. The airline's initial treatment had been disappointing but not entirely surprising. What interested her more was their response to the crisis. The panic, the overcorrection, the lack of coordination. These were symptoms of deeper organizational issues, ones that would need addressing if any acquisition went forward. 2 hours before landing, Olivia woke and checked her messages. Her executive team had sent several updates on the Singapore meetings, along with a note from her assistant. Pacific Airlines CEO calling nonstop. Says it's urgent regarding your flight.
How do you want me to respond?
Olivia typed a quick reply. Tell him I'll reach out after landing, and ask our team to gather the customer service data we discussed earlier. As she put away her phone, Taylor appeared again, this time with a handwritten note on Pacific Airlines stationery. Ms. Thompson, our captain, asked me to deliver this to you personally. Olivia took the envelope with a polite nod. Inside was a formal apology from the captain, expressing regret for any inconvenience and assuring her that this incident does not reflect the values of Pacific Airlines. Tucking the note into her bag, Olivia reflected on those words. In her experience, isolated incidents absolutely reflected company values. They were the most honest representation of culture you could find. How an organization behaved when they thought no one important was watching told you everything you needed to know. As the plane began its initial descent into Singapore, the cabin crew prepared for landing. The usual announcements were made, though with noticeably more warmth and enthusiasm than typical. Olivia gathered her belongings and closed her laptop. Whatever happened next would be determined not by panicked apologies or special treatment, but by whether this airline had the foundation necessary for transformation. The plane touched down smoothly on the runway, and passengers burst into the customary applause. As they taxied toward the terminal, Olivia noticed an unusual amount of activity near their designated gate, more ground staff than would be typical, and several individuals in formal business attire. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain announced as they approached the gate, we have arrived in Singapore. Local time is 4:30 p.m., and the temperature is a beautiful 82 degrees. On behalf of Pacific Airlines, I want to personally thank each and every one of you for flying with us today. We truly value your business and look forward to serving you again soon. As the seatbelt sign turned off and passengers began to stand, Olivia remained seated, watching the scene unfold. The real test of Pacific Airlines' suitability for acquisition wouldn't be found in desperate apologies or VIP treatment. It would be in what happened next. The aircraft door opened with a soft hiss, releasing a wave of humid Singapore air into the cabin. As passengers gathered their belongings and prepared to disembark, Olivia remained seated, responding to several urgent emails that had arrived during the final descent. She was in no rush to exit, preferring to avoid the initial crowd at immigration. At the front of the plane, Taylor and the other flight attendants maintained their professional smiles as passengers filed past, though their eyes kept darting nervously toward row 16 where Olivia sat typing on her phone. She's not getting up, Diane whispered to Taylor. Do you think that's a bad sign? Everything at this point seems like a bad sign, Taylor replied through his fixed smile. The regional director is waiting at the gate. He looks like he might pass out from stress. Outside on the jet bridge, a tense welcoming committee had assembled. Pacific Airlines' regional director for Asia, a middle-aged man named Robert Chen, straightened his tie for the 5th time in as many minutes. Beside him stood 3 other executives, all wearing identical expressions of controlled panic. Remember, Chen instructed his colleagues, we acknowledge the misunderstanding without dwelling on it, emphasize our commitment to improve training, and express our enthusiasm for potential partnership opportunities. Nobody mentions the economy seating incident specifically unless she brings it up first. The other executives nodded, rehearsing their carefully prepared lines under their breath. Back on the plane, the last few passengers were making their way to the exit. Olivia finally stood, tucking her phone into her pocket and retrieving her small carry-on from the overhead bin. The elderly woman who had sat beside her throughout the flight smiled warmly. It was lovely meeting you, she said. Whatever happens with these airline people, I hope your stay in Singapore is pleasant. Olivia returned the smile. Yours as well. Enjoy your time with your grandchild. As Olivia approached the exit, the flight crew's demeanor shifted noticeably. Their casual farewells to other passengers transformed into almost reverent nods as she passed. Ms. Thompson. The captain himself had emerged from the cockpit to stand by the door. I wanted to personally thank you for flying with us today. Olivia paused, studying the man's face. Unlike some of his crew, his expression showed genuine concern rather than just fear. Thank you, Captain. It was an interesting flight. He winced slightly at her choice of words but maintained his composure. I understand there was a mix-up with your seating assignment. I want to assure you that... Olivia raised her hand slightly, the same gentle but firm gesture she'd used with Taylor earlier. As I mentioned to your crew, this isn't the place for that discussion. I'm sure your ground team is waiting. The captain nodded, stepping aside to let her pass. Safe travels, Ms. Thompson. Olivia stepped onto the jet bridge, immediately spotting the nervous group of executives waiting midway down the corridor. Their formal attire and anxious expressions made them impossible to miss among the casually dressed arriving passengers. Robert Chen stepped forward as she approached, hand extended. Ms. Thompson, I'm Robert Chen, Regional Director for Pacific Airlines. On behalf of our entire organization, welcome to Singapore. Olivia shook his hand briefly. Thank you, Mr. Chen. We've arranged private transportation to your hotel, he continued, gesturing toward a younger executive who held an iPad. And we would be honored if you would join us for dinner this evening to discuss how Pacific Airlines can better serve Horizon Innovation's needs going forward. Several passengers slowed their pace as they passed, curious about the unusual welcome reception for the unassuming woman in jeans and a sweater. I appreciate the offer, Olivia replied, keeping her voice low, but I have meetings scheduled for this evening. Perhaps we could arrange a more formal discussion tomorrow at your headquarters. Chen looked both relieved and terrified at the suggestion. Of course. We would be delighted to host you. Would 10 a.m. suit your schedule? That would be fine. Olivia glanced at the other executives who were trying too hard to appear casual. I'll bring 2 members of my team if that's acceptable. Absolutely. We'll make all the necessary arrangements. Chen signaled to an assistant who began typing frantically on her phone. Now if you'll excuse me, Olivia said, I'd like to clear immigration and get to my hotel. Of course, of course. Chen stepped aside, then seemed to remember something. Oh, we've arranged expedited clearance for you. Our VIP liaison will escort you through the diplomatic channel. Olivia paused. That won't be necessary. I prefer to go through the standard process. The executives exchanged concerned glances. Are you certain? The regular line can take up to an hour at this time of day. I'm certain, Olivia replied firmly. I value understanding the complete customer experience. Chen nodded quickly, though his expression suggested this was yet another worrying sign. As you wish. However, please allow us to assist with your luggage. I only have this, Olivia indicated her carry-on, but thank you for the offer. As Olivia walked away toward immigration, the executives huddled together in urgent conversation. This is worse than we thought, Chen muttered. She's evaluating every aspect of our operation. Should we notify the CEO? One of the others asked. Chen nodded grimly. He's already on the overnight flight from headquarters. Call his assistant and update her on the situation. We need to prepare for tomorrow's meeting as if our jobs depend on it, because they probably do. Olivia joined the regular immigration line, using the time to observe the efficiency of the airport operations and to respond to more messages from her team. Several concerned the Pacific Airlines situation. News of her experience had somehow already reached her executive board, and opinions were divided on how to proceed. Her CFO had sent a blunt assessment. If this is how they treat their VIP customers, imagine how they treat everyone else. I recommend we look at other acquisition targets. Her chief strategy officer was more measured. One bad experience isn't representative of their entire operation. Let's gather more data before making a decision. Olivia tended to agree with the latter. She had built her career on looking beyond surface issues to understand the underlying systems and culture. Pacific Airlines had problems. That much was clear. But problems could be fixed with the right leadership and vision. After clearing immigration and customs, Olivia emerged into the arrivals hall. To her surprise, Chen and one of his colleagues were waiting. Ms. Thompson, Chen stepped forward apologetically. I hope you don't mind, but we wanted to ensure you had transportation to your hotel. Olivia had arranged her own car, but she recognized this as the olive branch it was intended to be. Thank you, Mr. Chen, that's thoughtful. Relief washed over his face. As they walked toward the exit, He ventured a more personal question. If you don't mind me asking, when you were assigned an economy seat despite your first-class reservation, why didn't you insist on the correct accommodation? Most executives would have demanded to speak with a manager immediately. Olivia considered the question carefully. I find you learn more about an organization by observing how they treat ordinary customers than by announcing your status and demanding special treatment. Chen looked stricken. And what did you learn about Pacific Airlines today? That's what we'll discuss tomorrow, Olivia replied as they reached the waiting car. I'll see you at 10 a.m. As her car pulled away from the curb, Olivia checked the time. She had 3 hours before her evening meetings, enough time to check into her hotel, change and review her notes from the flight. In her room at the Fullerton Hotel, Olivia connected her laptop and began organizing her observations. What had started as a simple instance of appearance-based discrimination had revealed deeper issues. Poor communication between departments, reactive rather than proactive customer service, and a culture of fear rather than accountability. But she had also seen potential, the captain's genuine concern, the elderly passenger's positive comments about previous flights, and even Taylor's attempt at a personal apology, however self-serving it might have been, suggested that not all was lost. Her phone rang. It was her chief operating officer, Lisa, who had arrived in Singapore the previous day to prepare for their meetings. I've been hearing rumors about your flight, Lisa said without preamble. Please tell me you didn't fire the entire crew mid-air, Olivia laughed. The rumor mill is getting more dramatic by the hour. No, I didn't fire anyone. I'm not even sure if we're going to proceed with the acquisition. That bad, huh? Lisa sounded concerned. It was. Illuminating, Olivia replied. I have a meeting at their headquarters tomorrow at 10. I'd like you and Raj to join me. Consider it done. Are we still leaning toward acquisition, or is this more of a courtesy meeting before we walk away? Olivia gazed out her hotel window at the Singapore skyline, considering the question. I haven't decided yet. Their service culture needs work, but the bones of the operation seem sound. Sometimes the companies that need the most improvement offer the greatest opportunity for transformation. That's very philosophical of you, Lisa noted. Most CEOs would have blacklisted them after being sent to economy based on their appearance. I'm not most CEOs, Olivia replied simply. After ending the call, Olivia returned to her laptop and opened a new document. At the top she typed, Pacific Airlines Transformation Strategy. Below it, she began listing key areas for improvement, potential executive changes, and training initiatives that would be necessary if Horizon proceeded with the acquisition. Whether that document would ever be implemented remained to be seen. Tomorrow's meeting would be crucial, not just for the airline executives fighting to save their jobs, but for Olivia to determine if the company's culture could be salvaged. As she prepared for her evening meetings, Olivia packed away the casual clothes she'd worn on the flight and changed into a simple but elegant business suit. No one would mistake her for an economy passenger now. Tomorrow, the power dynamic would be explicitly clear to everyone in the room. The real question was what she would do with that power. Her decision would affect thousands of employees, countless future passengers, and the legacy of both Pacific Airlines and Horizon Innovations. It wasn't a responsibility she took lightly. As she left her hotel room, Olivia made a mental note to check the flight manifest and crew information first thing in the morning. Whatever decision she made about the company's future, she wouldn't forget the individuals who had shown her exactly what needed to change. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Pacific Airlines headquarters, illuminating a conference room where tension hung in the air like a physical presence. 10 people sat around a polished table, 5 on each side with documents and water glasses arranged in perfect symmetry. On one side sat Olivia, now dressed in a tailored navy suit that conveyed quiet authority. Beside her, her co, Lisa, reviewed notes on a tablet while their chief of human resources, Raj, studied the faces across the table. The contrast between today's meeting and yesterday's flight couldn't have been more striking. Facing them were the 5 most senior executives of Pacific Airlines, including Robert Chen from the Airport Welcome Committee and the airline's CEO, William Parker, who had flown in overnight from the company's main headquarters. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed his lack of sleep, though his expression remained professionally neutral. Ms. Thompson, Parker began. his voice carrying the practiced calm of someone accustomed to crisis management. "First, let me personally apologize for the unfortunate experience you had on your flight yesterday. It falls far below the standards we strive to maintain at Pacific Airlines." Olivia nodded slightly but didn't immediately respond, allowing the silence to extend just long enough to be noticeable. It was a technique she rarely employed but found effective in certain situations. "Before we discuss that specific incident," she finally said, "I'd like to talk about your company more broadly. My team has prepared an analysis of Pacific's operations over the past 5 years. Lisa distributed folders to each executive. Inside were comprehensive reports covering everything from financial performance to customer satisfaction metrics, employee turnover rates, and safety records. As you're aware," Olivia continued, "Horizon Innovations has been exploring expansion into transportation services. Your airline came to our attention as a potential acquisition target for several reasons."
"Including your established routes across Asia and your relatively modern fleet." The executives nodded.
Tension visible in their rigid postures. However, Olivia's tone shifted slightly. "Our analysis reveals some concerning trends. Customer satisfaction has declined 18% over the past 3 years. Employee turnover, particularly among cabin crew, is 23% higher than industry average. And your Net Promoter Score has dropped to levels that typically indicate significant organizational issues." Parker cleared his throat. "We acknowledge these challenges, Ms. Thompson. The pandemic hit us particularly hard, and every airline faced the same pandemic," Olivia interrupted gently. "Some emerged stronger because they used the disruption as an opportunity to reimagine their operations and culture. Others," she gestured to the reports, "did not." The room fell silent again. Through the glass walls, employees could be seen watching the meeting with undisguised curiosity. Word had spread quickly about the CEO who had been denied her first-class seat and now held the company's fate in her hands. "That brings me to yesterday's flight," Olivia said, turning a page in her own copy of the report. "What happened to me personally is less important than what it represents about your organization." Parker looked confused. "I'm not sure I understand." "When your check-in attendant, Taylor, I believe, directed me to economy based solely on my appearance, it wasn't an isolated incident of poor judgment. It was a symptom of systemic issues in your company culture." She looked directly at each executive before continuing. "The fact that no one checked the VIP list against the passenger manifest, that your crew didn't communicate effectively during the crisis, that your response was panic rather than measured problem solving, these all point to deeper organizational failures." The executives exchanged uneasy glances. This was clearly not the meeting they had expected. Rather than an angry tirade about personal mistreatment, they were receiving a clinical dissection of their company's failings. "So," Parker ventured cautiously, "am I correct in assuming that Horizon is no longer interested in acquiring Pacific Airlines?" Olivia took a sip of water, considering her next words carefully. In her hotel room that morning, she had made her decision after reviewing all the data and reflecting on her observations. Now came the moment to reveal it. "Actually, Mr. Parker, we're more interested than before." Surprise registered on every face across the table. "More interested?" Chen repeated, clearly confused. "Yes. Yesterday's flight confirmed what our analysis suggested, that Pacific Airlines has fundamental operational and cultural issues that need addressing, but it also showed me something our analysis couldn't capture." "Which is?" Parker asked. "Potential," Olivia replied simply. "Beneath the problems, I saw the foundation of what could be an exceptional airline. Your captain showed genuine concern for passengers. Your ground staff in Singapore, despite their panic, were deeply committed to making things right. Even the flight attendant who initially dismissed me attempted to make amends when he realized his mistake." She leaned forward slightly. "These are people who want to do better but lack the proper systems, training, and leadership to excel consistently." The tension in the room shifted from fear to cautious hope. "However," Olivia continued, "our acquisition offer comes with conditions. Significant changes would be required, starting with your senior leadership team and extending throughout the organization." Parker stiffened. "What kind of changes?" Lisa slid another document across the table. "This outlines our proposed restructuring plan. It includes executive reassignments, a complete overhaul of your training programs, new customer service protocols, and revised hiring practices. As the executives reviewed the document, their expressions ranged from resignation to relief. Parker studied the pages carefully before looking up. "This is thorough," he said finally, "and I notice my position would be transitioning to an advisory role rather than CEO." "Yes," Olivia confirmed without apology. "We believe fresh leadership is essential for the transformation we envision." A heavy silence fell as Parker considered the proposal. His career, his legacy, and the futures of thousands of employees hung in the balance. "May I ask," he said eventually, "who would be taking over as CEO if this acquisition proceeds?" "We have several candidates in mind," Olivia replied, "but the final decision would depend partly on how the initial transition phase progresses." Parker nodded slowly, a man coming to terms with reality. "And the alternative to accepting these conditions?" "We walk away," Lisa answered. "And given your current financial situation, you would likely be facing either bankruptcy or a hostile takeover within 18 months. It wasn't a threat but a statement of fact, supported by the data in their reports. Parker exchanged glances with his team before responding. "We'll need to discuss this with our board, of course. But speaking personally, I believe your assessment is fair, Ms. Thompson. Sometimes it takes an outsider to see clearly what insiders have become blind to." Olivia appreciated his candor. It suggested he might prioritize the company's survival over his ego, a promising sign. "We'll give you 48 hours to review our proposal with your board," she said, standing to indicate the meeting was concluding. "My team will remain in Singapore during that time to answer any questions that arise." As handshakes were exchanged and the Pacific executives filed out, Raj stayed behind with Olivia and Lisa. "Do you think they'll accept?" he asked once they were alone. Olivia nodded. "They don't have much choice. But more importantly, I think they recognize the need for change." 3 weeks later, the business world buzzed with news of Horizon Innovation's acquisition of Pacific Airlines. Industry analysts debated the wisdom of a tech company moving into air transportation, while financial reporters focused on the purchase price and restructuring plans. What few people knew was the story behind the acquisition, how a simple act of appearance-based discrimination had accelerated a company's downfall and transformation. In the months that followed, Pacific Airlines underwent a complete metamorphosis. The most visible change came 6 weeks after the acquisition, when a press release announced a new training initiative for all customer-facing staff, focused on unconscious bias and service excellence. The press release included a quote from Olivia. "At its core, exceptional service isn't about recognizing status. It's about recognizing humanity. Every passenger deserves respect regardless of their appearance or position." Taylor, the flight attendant whose judgment error had triggered the chain of events, wasn't fired as many had expected. Instead, after a candid conversation with Olivia, he was reassigned to help develop and implement the new training program, using his own experience as a teaching tool. "Sometimes our biggest mistakes create our greatest opportunities for growth," Olivia told him during that conversation, both for individuals and organizations. 6 months after the acquisition, Pacific Airlines recorded its highest customer satisfaction scores in a decade. Employee turnover dropped to its lowest point in 5 years. The airline became known for its inclusive culture and exceptional service, values that extended from check-in counters to executive offices. Olivia continued to fly regularly on Pacific routes, sometimes in first class but often in economy by choice. On one such flight, she found herself seated next to a young woman in casual clothes who was traveling to her first job interview after college. "Any advice?" the young woman asked nervously, unaware of who she was talking to. Olivia smiled. "Be authentic. And remember that how you treat people when you think it doesn't matter, that's what truly reveals your character." As the plane soared through clouds toward its destination, Olivia gazed out the window, reflecting on how a single flight had changed the trajectories of so many lives. In business as in life, she believed that moments of crisis didn't create character flaws. They merely revealed what was already there, waiting to be addressed. And sometimes addressing those flaws created something better than anyone had imagined possible.